called the tuned mass damper. So should I continue with that, or continue with that? I mean, should I repeat it, or I should start with the multi-degree of freedom system? Already I have uploaded the PPT, so I hope you have gone through it. And although I have discussed, but I feel it maybe a little bit hurriedly I have discussed because of the time constraint. So should I need to go through that again, or I can move to the multi-degree of freedom system?
So can you repeat it, sir?
Repeat that dynamic vibration observer part, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just okay. So as you can see here, we have all discussed these things in the last class, but I am repeating again. Okay. So it is a 2 degrees of freedom system, right? So you can see simple 2 degrees of undamped system. So it's the mass m1, which we called as the main mass, and mass m2, which is the secondary mass, or also the absorber mass. Why it is absorber mass? Because as we will see shortly, that this mass is attached to reduce the vibration of the main mass, not sine omega bar t, where f naught is the amplitude of the force and omega bar is the forcing frequency or excitation frequency. Okay. Okay, so the K1 and K2 are the two springs. Okay, so the responses of the mass M1 and M2 are x1t and x2t respectively. Okay, so now I can write the equation of motion like this. So I can just draw the free body diagrams and apply this Newton's law or D'Alembert's principle, whichever you prefer, and then I can write the two equation of motion. So these two equations, if I write in the matrix form, I'll get this. So this is my mass matrix, this is my stiffness matrix. So actually, this left hand part you have already done, right? That's a very simple thing. Okay, and the right hand part is additional. The force part is coming because the main mass m1 is subjected to this force. Okay, now assuming the steady state harmonic solution, that is x1t as capital X1 of sine omega bar t and x2t is x2 of sine omega bar t. Okay, where omega bar is the forcing frequency, right, which is acting on the main mass m1. Okay, and x1 and x2 are the amplitude of the response of the mass m1 and m2 respectively. Okay, so if I substitute that assume solution in this equation, then what I am getting is this thing. So which I can write in the matrix form as this. Okay. So now how to find out this? So x1, x2 I can find out by inverting this matrix. Okay. This matrix I can invert it. So that is what it is written here. So x1, x2 equals to inverse of this into f1. So I can from by inverting it, I can write x1 as this, x2 as this. So these are the amplitude of the main mass and the secondary mass or the absorber mass. Okay. That is m1 and m2. Okay. This is amplitude of the motion. So these are in terms of K2, M2, you can see omega bar, F naught, all those things. So now I want to write this equation in terms of some defined parameters, which is I am calling it omega m, that is the frequency of the main mass in the standalone condition, that is K1 by M1. Okay, and then omega absorber is K2 by M2. Okay, then I have defined the static displacement xst, right? So xst is equals to f naught by K1, because f naught is the amplitude of the force by K1. So xst static displacement of this main mass. Okay, if it is standalone condition again, and then mu is the mass ratio, that is I think m2 by m1. That is the mass of this divided by mass of the main mass. So I have just defined some parameters. Remember that these are not the natural frequency of this 2 degrees of freedom system. This is a 2 degrees of freedom system, coupled system. So natural frequency will be different from, will not be equal to the root over k1 by m1 or root over k2 by m2. Okay, these are if it is a separate system. So I have just introduced this parameter and I'll write this equation using this parameter. So if I do this, so as I already mentioned, so these are the parameters I have defined. Okay. Use those parameters, I can write x1 and x2 using this manipulation. Okay, you just use those parameters. So now you can see the parameters are there, mu, omega and omega m, all those parameters are there. Okay, so now our aim is to reduce the motion of this mass. Okay, so now from this expression of x1, that is equation number 54, I can see that if omega bar, right, equals to omega a, just look at this expression, just only look at this expression. If omega bar equals to omega a, so then x1 is equals to 0, right, because numerator is 0. Okay, so it is becomes 0, and in that case x2 I can find out as I think in the last class someone has find out. Okay, so I'll come to that what it is. Okay, so So as I can see, if this condition is satisfied, that means the forcing frequency, omega bar is forcing frequency, and what is omega A? Omega is nothing but root over of K2 by M2, right? That is the frequency of the observer, okay, in the standalone condition, okay, around condition, okay. So if this condition satisfied, then I can see the amplitude of the main mass becomes 0, okay. So that is not basically vibrating, okay. And what is the, in that case, what is the amplitude of the second mass? So I can substitute omega bar equals to omega A here. So this is actually getting 0. So I will get x2, expression for the x2. Okay. Okay. So as I just mentioned, if omega bar equals to omega A, the amplitude x1 of the main mass reduces to 0. Okay. So what is that means? The absorber eliminates the vibration of the main mass completely, provided this condition satisfied. Okay. If this condition satisfied, you see, so the motion of this mass is eliminated because x1 is equals to 0. What about x2? x2 is equals to, if I simplify it, I will get minus f naught by k2. Okay. So what is the force in the absorber spring? Just to see what is happening there. Okay. So what is the force in the absorber spring? So absorber spring is k2, right? So k2 into small x2, right? Is it clear why it is k2 into small x2? Clear, right? It is the spring in force in the absorber spring. I want to see what reaction force it is providing. So k2 into x2, right? That is nothing but k2 into x2 is nothing but what? x2 sine omega bar t. It is actually x2. It is actually x2 sine omega bar t, right? That is the assumed solution. Just look at that, right? x2 sine omega bar t, right? x2 small x2 equals to, right? So that means k2 small x2 equals to, I can write k2 capital x2 sine omega bar t, but now omega bar is omega I, right? That is the condition that need to be satisfied, okay, to reduce the, to eliminate the motion of the main mass. So then I substitute here omega A, okay. Now I can write, but from here, from using 56, I obtain that the k2 x2 is nothing but minus f naught. From here I can write k2 x2, small k2 x2 is nothing but minus f naught, okay. So that I have substituted here, so I have got this. So you can see the forces in the absorber spring is nothing but minus sign f naught sine omega bar t, right? So whatever that means forces acting on the main mass, that is f naught sine omega t. So this spring forces is just opposing it. Okay. Okay, that is quite obvious also. So that is proved actually. Okay. So that is what it is written here. So absorber exerts on the main mass a force of minus f naught sine omega bar t, which balances exactly the applied force of f naught sine omega bar t. Correct? Now, so the condition is that this omega equals to omega A. Now omega is root over k2 by m2. So I can choose, so this is my excitation frequency, right? It is from the external forces. So I can choose k2 and m2 in a different manner so that I am able to satisfy this condition. Okay, so there is a wider choice, right? But usually this choice is governed by the practical scenario, what is the limitations on the motion of the mass x2, okay, right? Understood. Okay. Because you see x2 is what? x2 is f naught by k2. So if you keep the k2 very small, then x2 will be too large, right? So the absorber mass movement, what is x2? Is the amplitude of the absorber mass movement, right? So the absorber mass movement will be too large. So that is may not be acceptable, or you may not have that much space in reality to provide this that large amount of displacement motion of the absorber mass. So those are many different factors that will come into the picture. Also, you cannot provide too much m2 also, right? That will be heavy, additionally heavy weight you are putting on the system, right? So those are the things that you have to optimize in the real scenario. Then actually I talked about, okay, I'll discuss a little bit, okay, this out. So you see what is happening, that it is actually omega m, and this is omega bar actually. This is actually omega m equals to omega absorber, okay. Fine. So this is omega m2. M2 by M1, this is correct. Okay. So this is the plot shown for a typical example where M2 by M1 is taken as 1/120. So omega M is omega A. Okay, natural frequency of the main mass and the absorber mass are tuned. Okay. So in that case, you see the response without observer and with observer. You see this is the response, right? X1 by delta ST. Scaled response, normalized response with respect to the static displacement. This is delta or XST, whatever. And this is the forcing frequency by the this is M. Okay. Yeah. What was there previously? Correct. M. Omega bar. Omega M, omega A. Okay, so in this case, you see, so at the resonant condition, right? So when omega bar is equals to this ratio is 1. So you see, without absorber, there is a unbounded response. Since damping is not there, but if I provide this condition satisfied, right? So then it is reducing. So with observer, there is a you see it is 0, right? The response is 0 actually. And even you see, even if it is not exactly 1 also, so in the vicinity of 1 also, you see the response are not too large. Okay? But the problem is that it is creating 2 more peaks, that is at omega 1 and omega 2. There are 2 more peaks it is creating. Okay, so that is the disadvantage of the vibration observer. So 2 new resonant frequencies is created. So that is a problem for like rotating machine, because rotating machine will start from low frequency, then it will rotate, so it will pass through this, right? So at that position there will be that will create a problem. Okay, right? So to reduce the amplitude of the resonant frequency, so damping can be added, but this result in an increase in amplitude of the neighborhood of the operating frequency. Okay, so in that damping you can provide additional damping. So the best idea is that if the system operates in this region, right? I mean, the forcing frequency is equal to the system main mass frequency, and this condition has to be satisfied, that omega bar equals to omega a has to be satisfied. So that means if this condition is satisfied basically, so then it is a tuned condition, right? It's a tuned condition. Everything is tuned. Omega bar is the excitation frequency. Omega m is the frequency of the main mass, standalone condition, and omega is the frequency of the absorber mass in the standalone condition. So if this condition satisfied, then its performance is better, right? So if the main system is operating at the resonance, then it is more effective. So that's why it's called the tuned mass damper. Okay, so it's additional mass, it's providing a damping effect and tuned to the system nasal frequency as well as the forcing frequency, right? Okay, so you understood here, right? That this forcing frequency will not be known a priori for an earthquake excitation or random excitation. Okay, so in that case, the tune mass damper will not be so effective. But for wind loading, in general, the frequencies are if it is not a turbulent kind of wind or like a what should I say, mean wind, for mean wind flow, the frequency are usually known to us. Okay, and for the wind loading, the system mainly vibrates in its first mode of oscillation. Okay, the contribution from the first mode is important. Okay, so that's why for wind induced vibration control of a tall structure, the TMDs are quite effective. Okay, then these are the some of the examples I just talked about. Okay, that's all. You can read more about this thing if you are interested and from the related literatures. Okay, so now we'll move to the our multi degrees of freedom system. So as I already mentioned, we have actually done the most of the important parts in the 2 degrees of freedom system. Okay, when we discuss about this multi degree of freedom system. Okay, so 2 degrees of freedom system is a special case of multi degree of freedom system, right? Okay, so here we will talk about n degrees of freedom system, not limited, restricted to 2 degrees of freedom system. Okay, so again we will discuss about the orthogonality mode set. We will derive that in a formal manner, okay, systematic manner, not by just u1 transpose m into u2 through calculation, algebraic calculation, and show it 0. Okay, not those type of things, or systematically in a matrix vector notation you will do it. Okay, and then we will solve again we will talk about the modal superposition method. Okay, and we did not talk about damping so far. Okay, so how to consider the damping. Okay, and also force vibration part, because the forcing part also did not include it. So those type of few things we'll discuss, and then finally in this section, the multi-degree of freedom section, we will talk about how to find out the natural frequencies and mode shape, what are the different methods available, or which peoples are used in the older days. So those we'll try to understand it. Okay, but before that, I want to just introduce few more things on this multi-degree of freedom system. Okay, so as you already know that, or I talked in the initial classes, that the actual system in most of the cases, practical system is continuous system, right? You will not find in nature, right? Real system, you will not find like this, right? Lumped mass like this, or a 2 degrees of freedom system like this. How will you find out, right? This, I mean, this type of system very rare, unless you made it like that. Okay, but a real system is a very complicated system, and it's a continuous system. Okay, and continuous system, how many degrees of freedom? Infinite number of degrees of freedom. Okay? And obviously the real system is quite complicated, because the mass distribution, stiffness distribution, all those things are, I mean, not in a unique manner. Okay, there can be a change in the cross section, right? Material properties, many things. So those, I mean, so for by solving by treating the real system as a continuous system and solving for the government differential equation will be quite difficult. Okay, right? So that's why we do it, I mean, to idealize it, okay, discretize it basically, okay, lumped it. Lumped it means we have, I mean, at some particular places we thought that here the mass and the stiffness are there, okay, so that we can treat them as a finite number of multi-degree of freedom system. Multi-degree has freedom system has a finite degrees of freedom, right? But continuous system has an infinite degrees of freedom, okay. So like for example, so as I just told, most vibrational system encountered in physical situation have distributed property. All are distributed, like just a cantilever beam. Think about a cantilever beam or a simply supported beam. So each and every point there is a stiffness, there is a mass, right? So possesses infinite number of degrees of freedom, okay. So I can write the equation of motion for that. That is a partial differential equation that we will discuss in when we talk about our last section. That is the continuous system, okay. But that is very difficult to solve if your system is not system. There is I mean, complication with the system, or your system is not uniform, mass and stiffness distribution is not uniform, that the closed form solution or even numerical solution, some direct solution of the equation of motion is quite difficult, okay, right? So why infinite number of degrees of freedom? Because the system is fully described only when the motion is known at every point of the system, correct? So in many cases the mass and stiffness distribution are highly non-uniform, okay. It may be more feasible to construct discrete mathematical model, okay. So instead of continuous, which has an infinite number of degrees of freedom, so idealize it and construct a discrete mathematical model which need only finite, that is the important thing, finite number of parameters to describe the mass and stiffness properties, and hence its motion can be described using only a finite number of coordinates, okay. So that is a continuous system which has an infinite number of degrees of freedom. We are converting it to a into discrete mathematical model which has a finite number of degrees of freedom, okay, right? Okay. Okay. So like this, so let's say this is a torsional shaft, okay, non-uniform shaft, okay, it's a non-uniform shaft, right? You see the cross section is changing, okay, and it's the distributed properties, right? So it's the mass moment of inertia I and the Gj are varying with x along the length of the shaft, okay. So this is a continuous system, okay, right? So instead of solving this, okay, so what I am going to do, I am to discretize it, okay. The continuous shaft approximated by discrete model, okay, by dividing into 6 segments. So I have just, it is for example. I mean, just for example, we have divided into the 6 segments: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I have divided this into the 6 segment, okay. Okay, so you see, so associated with the for each segment there is a mass moment of inertia II, and the connected by a 7 massless shaft of torsional rigidity Gj. So this is like act like a spring, okay, rotor spring of GGI, okay, I equal to 1 to 7, okay. You understood it? So I have to choose these parameters in such a manner so that it simulates the actual continuous model as closely as possible. Obviously, you will not get the exact thing, right? But it should represent the actual continuous model as closely as possible. Okay? Like this, another iteration is like this. I can call it like this. So lumped mass model of a 3-story building. Okay. So here the inertia of the system is assumed to be concentrated at 3 point masses, just like 3 point masses located at the floor level, here, here, and the elasticities of the columns are replaced by the springs. So the springs are providing the elasticity of the columns in the floor level. Okay. So how, for a conformal continuous system, I can idealize it as a lump parameter system of finite degrees of freedom. Okay. Okay, so you see these what you have discussed. These are some arbitrary method, right? Okay, so the more systematic and the modern days method is a discretization procedure. So all are discretization procedure, right? So discretizing it from continuous system to multi-degree freedom system, from infinite number of degrees of freedom to finite number of degrees of freedom. So the modern approach is called the finite element method. Okay, so since we have not learned this till now, or also you don't have any idea on the matrix structure analysis. So you have not done any courses on matrix structure analysis so far, right?
No, sir.
No. So you don't know about the stiffness matrix. You know stiffness matrix?
No,
Except
no, sir,
about about
yes.
this course. In this course, you discuss mass matrix, stiffness matrix. But in your static structure analysis, have you heard about that stiffness matrix?
No, sir. We actually did like that slope displacement method and then
Yeah,
moment distribution.
it is the starting point of that. But anyway, So I will not obviously going to talk about that. You maybe learn in your next year. Okay. So then it will be actually facilitated. Okay. So once you learn this finite element method or matrix structural analysis, then you will know from a real structural system like a multi-story building or bridges or whatever. Okay. Even for car or whatever, how to get the discrete model and to get mass and stiffness. That's all. And once you got this mass and stiffness, you put it in the equation of motion. Okay. According to the degrees of freedom, obviously that x vector will be there. So the discretization only you will find out. Okay. And then you solve it. Okay. Right. Okay, so I have just written here, you can read it. But it is basically the, I will just give a little bit small example maybe. Like you see, you have done like this type of trust problem, right? Let's say, it's a simple trust problem. Okay. This is a trust problem subjected to some loading, maybe some loading here. Okay. So you know how to solve it by using different methods, right? Trust. This is a trust problem. Okay. So in matrix structure analysis, what do you do? So we treat this as a single one element. So how many element here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 element. And for each element we construct its stiffness matrix. So that's called element stiffness matrix. Okay. So for each element we construct a stiffness matrix. And then we assemble it because the structure, whole structure is assembled condition, right? It is not constituted of one element here, one element here, one element here, not like that, right? It constituted all the elements, 6 elements. So for individually we construct element stiffness matrix. It's called the element stiffness matrix for each element. Then we assemble it depending upon the nodal degrees of freedom. These are called nodes. So the joint is called the nodes depending on the nodal degrees of freedom. For the 2D truss, there will be 2 degrees of freedom, right? That is ux, uy. So then you assemble it, and finally actually you formed a expression like that, k into the nodal displacement x equals to the force applied, force vector, and solve it to find out the nodal responses. Okay, but it will be too much if I go that in detail. Okay, and this need a complete course work. Okay. Anyway, we'll concentrate what we are now discussing. Okay. So how to do the equation of motion for a multi-degrees of freedom system using the Newton's second law? Okay, we have already done for 2 degrees of freedom system, so I have just written here. So what you have to do, they select the appropriate coordinate to define the position of various point masses or the rigid bodies in the system. Assume suitable positive direction for displacement, velocity and acceleration. Just you suitably choose it. Define the static linear configuration of the system. Measure displacement from this position for respective masses. That may define x1, x2, x3, xn. That is what I am trying to say. Okay. Then obviously the important thing, draw the free body diagram of the each masses. So for 2 degrees of freedom system, we derive the, or we draw the free body diagram for the M1 and M2, right? And what are the forces acting on it? Okay. That means the damping force, spring force. Okay. And if you want to use the D'Alembert's principle, then you have to show the inertia forces also, as well as the external forces. Okay. So then you apply the Newton's law. That is the mass into acceleration for a particular mass. For each mass, you just apply the Newton's law equal to force into a force acting on the sum of the forces acting on the mass in that direction. Okay. So that is just in a systematic manner I have written. You have already done for 2 degrees of freedom system. That can be easily extended for any number of degrees of freedom. Okay. So just we treat, I think, this part only, right? For 2 degrees of freedom system. Now it can be extended to n degrees, n number of degrees of freedom. Okay. So this is a typical MI ith unit. So for this is the free body diagrams. Okay. So now I can apply the Newton's law to write the equation of motion for that. That I got the equation of work. Okay. And again, so similarly for I equal to 1, 2, and I can go through, and finally I can write the in matrix form, equation of motion in the matrix form. So M x double dot, where M is the mass matrix, C is the stiffness damping matrix, and K is the stiffness matrix. And these are all symmetric in nature. And X is the displacement vector, X dot is the velocity vector, and this one is the acceleration vector. And this is the external force vector. Like we did for the, so just try to recollect what you have done for the 2 degrees of freedom system. That is just an extension we are talking about. So obviously now your mass matrix will be like this for the present case. Okay. Okay. It might in your finite element, if you do modeling for a complicated, I mean for a real structural system, so this may not be diagonal. Okay. It might be fully populated. Okay. Or at least some thing near the diagonal will be non-zero. Okay. But anyway, for the present system, it is the diagonal matrix. But symmetry, right? But anyway, it will be symmetry. then damping matrix like this, okay, and the stiffness matrix like this. You remember your last time we have discussed about this thing, right? Only 2 by 2 system. So just it is an extension, displacement vector and the force vector. Okay. Now obviously these are symmetric, so Mij equals to Mgi, Cij equals to Cgi, Kij equals to Kji. Okay. So in spite of the fact that equation 2, that is our equation of motion, right, possesses constant coefficient, that is the M, C and K. The general closed form solution of the equation is extremely difficult to obtain. Okay. Correct? You see, we have done it for a 2 degrees of freedom system, right? By inverting the matrix and just we discussed it for the tune mass damper or dynamic vibration observer. We have shown that we can invert the matrix and find out the amplitude of x1 and x2, right? Amplitude of the main mass and the observer mass. But for this multi degrees of freedom system, when there is thousands of degrees of freedom, 50,000 degrees of freedom, let's say. So it is very difficult to get a closed form solution like that. Okay. So in that case, the mode superposition method or the modal analysis will be helpful to us. Okay. So another interpretation of those matrices, right, mass, damping and stiffness matrices or the equation of motion is through the dynamic equilibrium condition. Okay. So let us see what it is. Okay. So let's say it is a simply supported beam. Okay. So I'll just again talk about a little bit about this stiffness coefficient. Okay. So here see, so let's say we have discretized into, so this is obviously continuous system, right? So I am discretizing into n number of degrees of freedom, 1 to n. Okay. So and I'm calling this the displacement at those locations at y1, vertical transverse displacement of the beam as y1, y2, yi, and this is yn. Correct? Okay. And it is subject to an arbitrarily distributed load of pxt. Okay. Fine. So you see, so at each point, right, that is I equal to 1 to n, right, all those points. So the displacement is, I am talking about only the transverse displacement, but here it can be rotation can be there, right? So it can involve any other degrees of freedom. Okay. So that depending upon the problem at your hand. Okay. So but now for the sake of simplicity, I am considering that only the transverse displacement is there for the beam. Okay. So in principle, these points may be located arbitrarily on the structure. In practice, they should be associated with specific features of the physical properties, which may be significant and should be distributed to provide a good measure of the deflected shape. Okay. So that means what I am trying to say is that you should choose this point, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, n, so that it actually resembles the real behavior of the system as close as possible, right? Like you see, under the distributed load, this is going to deflect like this, right? Okay. So I'll choose the points in such a manner so that it can represent the behavior approximately. Okay. So that is it trying to say. So analyst will choose the number of degrees of freedom, that is the displacement component here, to consider. Okay. Degrees of freedom to consider. How many degrees of freedom you want to consider? So then this depends upon the analyst. Okay. So larger number of obviously provide the better approximation of the two dynamical behavior. Okay. That is obvious, right? I mean, as we go, because n is infinity is the real system, actual system. So as the n you take more number of degrees of freedom, it will the closer to the true dynamic behavior of the system. Okay. So at each point, as just I already mentioned that is at I equal to 1 to n. Okay. There could be several other displacement component, right? For example, rotation can be there. There can be axial motion, right? Like for a beam, I hope you have learned it. So for a 2D beam, okay. What are the degrees of freedom at a point? Just at a point. Let's say cantilever beam free end. So what are the degrees of freedom at the this end for a 2D beam? 2D. Let's say at this, what are the degrees of freedom? Possible degrees of freedom. Yes. Come on, for beam. What are the degrees of freedom at this node? One node, let's say this is a one node or a point. Let's say point, forget about node. So this terminology are related to finite element or matrix structure analysis. Just a point. So at the end point, what are the displacement component? What could be the displacement component? Yes, anybody please? Yes, what are the displacement component?
So two, sir.
What are those?
One like vertical.
Vertical displacement and another?
Is horizontal displacement possible, sir? Like,
Horizontal displacement. Vertical displacement, horizontal displacement. Okay. So have you done, I mean, your structural analysis, have you for a beam problem, right? You find deflection, slope, all those things you heard about or not done yet?
like the slope deflection method, sir.
No, I mean, just let's say a cantilever beam or a simply supported beam, let's say. A substituted point node. You know what are the slopes and deflection you can find out, right? Other points. So have
Yes,
you
sir.
heard
Like,
have you heard about the slope, then deflection, that is deflection is y, slope is dy dx. So have you heard for the beam, those terms?
yes, sir. That I think we did in that mechanics of solid third semester. Like
Mechanics you done, right? Mechanics.
yes, sir. In that we used to find slope of the free. I mean, like the pin support, and then
Yeah,
the
so
deflection point of.
if a beam deflect, so at any point in general, there can be deflection and there is a slope, that is rotation basically, right? What is slope? There is a rotation at that point. And you write there can be axial deformation, but we usually ignore it, okay? Because axial rigidity is much higher, okay? So in some special case, except some really special case, axial deformation you can safely ignore. But you are right, there can be axial degrees of freedom. So that is basically u, v and theta. So there is a 3 degrees of freedom at the beam node. I don't know what about other people, they are not replying at all. Maybe they know it. Anyway, this much you should say, right? For the beam, there is a, I'm not expecting to say you the axial deformation, but the deflection and the slope, you can tell it. Right? Okay. So there can be 3 degrees of freedom actually for 2D problem, u, v and theta. But for 3D problem, if it is a 3 dimension, beam is in 3 dimension, okay, space, then at each node or each point, 6 degrees of freedom. Okay. I'll not go into that. Okay. So this much you should remember that there can be u, axial deformation, transverse deflection v, and the rotation. That is dv by dt theta, or if you call it y, then dy by dx. Okay, slope for the Euler boundary beam, excluding the shear deformation. Okay. Okay. So I'll continue from this. In general, so there will be 4 types of forces involved at any point I. So any point, at any point, whether it is 1, 2, I, so any typical point I, so there are 4 forces. Okay. So just try to, I mean, match this with the 2 degrees of freedom or your even single degree of freedom system. So here it is Pi, so that is the external load. Okay, external forces and applied forces. Okay, and then there are these forces, which is the inertia force, damping force, and the elastic force. So Fi, Fd, and Fsi, and I indicate the ith coordinate corresponding to the ith coordinate. Okay, the ith location you can say. So these are the forces resulting from the motion. Why? Because this this depends upon the acceleration, right? This depends upon the velocity, and this depends upon the displacement. So that's why this depends upon the motion, resulting from the motion. If there is no motion, it's not coming into the picture, right? Okay. So then, so I can now apply the D'Alembert's principle, right? So for all such point, I equal to 1 to n. Okay. So I can write like this. Okay. So for the first point, second point, third point, similarly ith point here, let's say, and the nth point. Clear? Just f1i plus fd1 plus fs1, dynamic equilibrium. And I can write it in the vector form. Like this, right? Fi, fd, fs equal to pt. And pt include that p1, p2, p3, dot, 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 pn. Fi include that fi, that inertia force. This include fi1, fi2, fi3, so on and so forth, the fin, right? Clear? And the fs, spring force. Similarly, spring force will include fs1, fs2, dot, fsn. Clear? This is right. No issue with that. Okay. Now we will express this fs, fd, or fi using some term that's called the influence coefficient. So first we will deal with this fs. Okay, because that is easy to understand. Okay, so what is that? Okay, so I can, so fs, so first fs is fs1, right? So what is Fs1? Fs1 is the spring force at coordinate 1. Okay. So you are getting actually basically some preliminary ideas of the what is stiffness coefficient all about. Okay. Right. Here, okay. So you see, so each of the resulting forces is expressed most conveniently by means of an appropriate inference coefficient. What is that inference coefficient? I'll talk about that. Okay. So consider the elastic force component developed at the point 1, that is Fs1. There are so many forces, Fs2, Fs3, Fsn, right? And that constitute your Fs vector, that is the spring force vector, the column vector, right? Okay. So this in general depends on the displacement component developed at all points on the structure, right? Because you see, so this is the beam, right? Simply supported beam, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, I, N, 1, 2, dot, 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 like that. So I want to find out the spring force at this one. So F is 1, okay? Spring force at node 1. So that obviously going to depend on the displacement of the all the nodes, right? On the nodes or all the points here, okay? So that's why I can write, since the system is linear, so I can treat each point and then add it. So Fs1, this plus this plus this plus this. Okay. You see F equal to K into displacement. That like that only. Okay. So for all points, there are many points, right? So let us first concentrate on this point 1. Okay. And here the displacement is y1. This is displacement is y2, right? Till yn. Okay. So I am defining this first. This one is that K11 y1. What is K11? K1 is called the, it is an inference coefficient, and in this case it is called the stiffness inference coefficient. Okay. Okay. So what is 11? 11 indicates that the force at coordinate 1. Try to see it. Okay, I'll write it bigger. K11. Force at the first one indicate the force at coordinate 1 due to unit force, unit deformation at 1 with all other coordinate restrained. Okay, that means there is no displacement on the all other coordinates. Then 2, 3, 4, 5 till n, there is no displacement I am providing. I am providing only unit displacement at node 1 or coordinate 1, and I am checking what are the forces generating at coordinate 1. So that is called K11. That is the stiffness coefficient. So K11 is for unit force, right? Sorry, unit displacement. So unit displacement, the force due to unit displacement. So for y1 displacement, K11 into y1. Similarly, K12. Force at 1. You see, we are concentrating on 1 only because we want to find out the spring forces at the node 1. Correct? So force at 1 due to unit displacement at 2. Now 2, unit displacement at 2. And no other displacement on all other coordinates. Okay. No displacement at all other coordinates. That means, let me clarify it. Okay. So how the first component K11 is coming? 1, 2, 3, I, N. Okay. Here that is fixed. It cannot go off. So for the first case, that's all. Like that. Okay. So there is no displacement at all other coordinates. I should not say like this. Sorry. So unit displacement here only. So this quantity is unit. So one unit displacement provided here and no displacement at any other point. But then what is the forces at this node? I am calling it the K11. But here actual displacement is y1. So what is actual force? So K11 y1. Similarly, second case K12. So what is the force here due to unit displacement at here? Okay, and no displacement in all other coordinates. But here actual displacement is y2. So the force is K12 y2. Similarly, Kyn yn, right? So then linear system, I can sum it up. Right. Superposition valid. So that is the spring force at coordinate 1 is due to all this. And this coefficient, this K11, K12, K13, K1 is called the stiffness inference coefficient or simply the stiffness coefficient. Similarly, corresponding to degrees of freedom 2 y2, right? So that is spring force at node 2 or the degrees of freedom 2. So I can write K21 y1, K22 y2, right? K21 means now force at node 2 because I want to find force at coordinate 2, right? So force at coordinate 2 due to unit displacement at 1. This is force at node 2 due to unit displacement at node or coordinate 2. Force at node 2 due to unit displacement at node 3. Force at node 2 due to unit displacement at coordinate n with all other restraint. Okay. So I can write like this. So in general, I can write like this. If it's I equal to I1 I2, I3, In. Okay. Now this I can express in the matrix form, right? And I can get this. Understood? What it is? FSI is equals to KI1 Y1, right? KI1 Y1 plus KI2 Y2, so on and so forth, KIN YN. This is the general expression, right? How I am getting this general expression? I mean, again repeating, like this expression I can get for FS1, this expression I can get for FS2, similarly FS3, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are called the inference coefficient, stiffness inference coefficient. Okay, or simply the stiffness coefficient. Okay, so now I can get this general expression. So for I equal to 1 to n, right? So I can write FS1 K11 Y1 K12 Y2 plus so on and so forth K1n Yn. FS2 K12 Y1 K22 Y2 plus K2n Yn, so on and so forth. FSN Kn1, right? Y1 Kn2 Y2. These are dot dot dot, all are like this. Okay, plus K nn Yn. Okay, clear? Now I can write it in the matrix form, right? So I can just make a vector like this: fs1, fs2, so on and so forth. Fsn equals to k11, k12, k1n, and here k2. This should be 21, right? 21. Then k22, and finally kn1 and to kn, multiplied by y1, y2. Clear? So this is actually called your stiffness matrix. So this is just a basic understanding of the stiffness matrix, and the way I have shown here using this inference coefficient approach, basically this is a classical approach is called. It is only possible for a simple system. Okay, for complicated system you have to do it in a systematic manner through the direct stiffness matrix approach. Okay, but this is the idea behind it. What is the inference stiffness inference coefficient? Okay, so you got it right. What we are finally getting is that fs1, fs2, fsn, all the spring forces is nothing but k11, k12, k1n, k21, k22, k2n dot dot kn1, kn2, knn multiplied by y1, y2, yn. Okay, so this is called your stiffness matrix K. So I can write that fs, right? Fs, spring force vector, is equal to K into your y, yn, right, or whatever, y, right? So this is n cross 1, n cross n, n cross 1. Okay, got it? And this K is called the stiffness matrix. Okay. And by virtue of Maxwell reciprocal theorem, Maxwell-Bettis reciprocal theorem, it's symmetric. This matrix is symmetric. That is Kij is equals to Kji due to Maxwell-Bettis reciprocal theorem. Okay. So any doubt in this? What I just talked about in the last 5 to 10 minutes? Okay. So everything is written here. You can see this. So K is called the stiffness matrix of the structure. Yeah, for the specified shade of displacement coordinate, right? For that specified shade of y, that is y1, y2, y3, yn. Okay, right? If you consider rotation or you define some different coordinate system, then K will be different, right? Obviously. So and why I am able to write this plus this plus this plus this, because of the system is linear, so superposition principle is valid. Okay, what is Kij? Stiffness inference coefficient, or simply the stiffness coefficient. It is defined as force corresponding to coordinate I, okay, or node I due to unit displacement at coordinate j with displacement at all other points 0. Okay. So similarly, so I can write the expression for the damping. So Fd is equals to C into y dot. Okay, so where Cij is defined as damping inference coefficient, that is force corresponding to coordinate I due to unit velocity of coordinate j with velocity of all other points 0. Okay. And again, Fi inertia force, equals to m into I double dot, where mij is the mass influence coefficient, the force corresponding to coordinate I due to the unit acceleration. Now it is acceleration, right, of the coordinate g with the acceleration of all other points. Okay, but we hardly obtained. I mean, we usually not obtained m and at least c. C to we never obtain in this way. Okay, c will obtain through the. It is impractical actually. Okay, so we will obtain c. That is the damping matrix using the modal damping ratio, that is the zeta. So that we'll discuss later. But the K matrix is can be obtained for a simple system like the way I have discussed here. Okay. Right. So this is the mass matrix. So now you see, now I am going to substitute this equation 6, 7 and 8. Right. That is Fi equals to m into I double dot, Fd is equals to c into I dot, and Fs equals to k into y. Correct. I will substitute where? I will substitute. I will substitute in this expression. Correct. That is Fi plus Fd plus Fs equals to Pt. Then what I will get? I will get the equation of motion, right? M into x y double dot plus c into y dot plus k into y equals to Pt. Are you getting my point? I substitute this 6, 7, 8 in the equation 4. Equation 4 is what? Fi vector plus Fd vector plus Fs spring vector is equal to the vector of the external forces, right? So right hand side is as it is. Now Fi is what? M mass matrix into y double dot, right? Y double dot. Damping is stiffness matrix into y dot, and spring is k into y. K is the stiffness matrix, C is the mass matrix, C is the damping matrix, and M is the mass matrix, which constitute. Come. So this constitutes the stiffness coefficient, stiffness influence coefficient, damping influence coefficient, and the mass influence coefficient. Okay, right? Which is symmetric in nature. So you see, these are the same expressions that you obtain using the Newton's law also. So this I have just giving another interpretation of the using dynamic equilibrium approach. Okay, you can refer to Claffen-Pengine. Okay, Pengine for whatever the derivation just I have shown. Okay. You can see in detail there, okay. But you may not understood all the things because since you have not used to this influence coefficient approach, okay. So just try to understand whatever you can from this thing, okay, by reading the books and as well as whatever I have discussed. And it is not a very difficult thing, right? You understood, and that is actually the structural analysis in the now at the present age we are doing, okay. That the matrix structural analysis or the finite element method. Whatever you are learning like moment distribution, slope deflection, Kani's method, what are the method, column analogy method, what are the more methods is there? So those are old age method. I mean, those are really important to understand the behavior of the structural system. And when the computer was not that popular or computer speed was not that good, so till around 1970, okay. So those methods are quite popular, especially the moment distribution method and the Kani's method, okay. So those methods are quite popular till 1970s and even till 1980s, okay. And also for small hand calculation just to check it, okay. Because you see in computer, it is garbage input, garbage output, right? GIGO, G-I-G-O, garbage input, garbage output. So if you model it wrongly, give some wrong input, it will give some result, and you will get some colorful plot, nice different colorful plot, but that result may be totally just wasted if your modeling is wrong. So it is better to sometimes check using those traditional methods. Okay, but nowadays, I mean, you all do the structural analysis, whether it's a bridge, building, wind turbine, or mechanical model, car vibration, whatever, static, dynamic, any problem, usually through the computer systems, computer softwares are available. So that uses the finite element method or direct stiffness matrix method. Okay, to get the response. I mean, to solve it, basically, to solve the structural analysis problem. Okay. So I have written here, you can read it. Okay. Kij, right? Okay, I have to stop it. Right? Kij obtained using direct equilibrium method is feasible for simple structure, okay, with few degrees of freedom. Right? If it is like this simple type of structure, then it is possible. Not practical for complex structure or computer implementation. This way, computer is difficult. So most commonly used method is the direct stiffness method, wherein stiffness matrices of the individual element are assembled to obtain the structural stiffness matrix. I just talked about it, a truss problem So what we'll do for each truss, we'll construct its elements. We'll consider each truss as an element, that each part of the truss. Okay. So we'll construct a element stiffness matrix for each element, and then we assemble it to get the overall structural stiffness matrix, and then we solve the problem. For static, it will be K into X equals to F. For dynamics, it will be mass and damping will come into this. Yes, it is impractical and you do not do it. To compute Cij of the damping matrix directly from the dimension of the structure and size of the structural element, damping is generally specified in terms of the damping ratio, which we obtain from the experimental data. How to find C from the damping ratio, that is data, we will see a little bit down there. How to construct it. So we have not talked about the C so far, right? Damping matrix, as far as the multi degrees of freedom system is concerned. So we'll talk that, and later, after finishing again the orthogonality of the mode shape, mode superposition, then we'll talk about this damping matrix separately. Okay. So any doubt? Today's discussion. You see, I understood that you might have little difficulties in understanding all those things because you don't have that much background to that. But don't worry about that, because there will not be question regarding to formulate this coefficient Cic for a big structural system, right? Obviously, I am not going to give a truss or a frame structure and ask you to form mass or stiffness matrix, right? So there will be a simple discrete system will be given. Okay. So from that you have to just draw the free body diagram, and then you can write the just equation of motion for the each mass, either using Newton's law or D'Alembert's principle. Okay. Then you can form the mass and stiffness matrix. Okay. And once you learn in the future how to got the mass and stiffness matrix for the real system, then you can incorporate those matrices in your equation of motion, solve it, and get the required responses. But some basic idea, I hope I am able to give to you. So I again urging all of you to please solve some problems, okay, like how to formulate the equation of motion, how to get the mode shapes and frequency for a 2 degrees of freedom system, or even you can not now start 3 degrees of freedom system, okay, because now we entered into the multiple degrees of freedom system. So 2 degrees of freedom system, if you are able to do, you can do it the 3 degrees of freedom system. And the matrix and vector operation, I think calculator supports, right? Now your calculator supports till 3 by 3 matrices or 3 cross 1 vector. So please solve some problem from the books. Okay, so if you have any doubt, then you can ask me. I'll be here for 2 more minutes. But I think the time is over. You might have the next class, so you can, otherwise you can leave. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, sir.